following is a presentation of the iRacing eSports Network.
Brooklyn, Michigan. This is where the scene is set. It is a quarter-final. It's the boys in form against one of the favourites for the iRacing World Cup, or the World Cup of iRacing as it's called. It's DEATCH versus New York here on the iRacing eSports Network, and we will get to action in just a few moments' time. Brought to you by RaceSpot TV. Stand by. This is going to get interesting. It is one of those events which has had a long and prestigious history. 10 years we have watched and seen the World Cup of iRacing, from iRacing's own inauguration to the, shall we say, more independent approach to this event, but it still has the same aura, the same prestige as it once has. This is quarter-final time. It is Germany versus DEATCH, as Rene O'Hara has just set the fastest time in qualifying, 38.850 lap times here in the trucks at the fantastic circuit of Michigan. So that's the state of play at the moment. It's a very, very interesting dynamic for this quarter-final, because the New York team did have to qualify just an hour ago. They finished their races about 15 minutes ago, and that's going to be a big challenge. They've got to deal with the fact they're racing 2 races back-to-back. Yes, they know the track better than DEATCH, who are trying to get up into play, but more crucially, this New York side has to deal with the tiredness factor of doing back-to-back 20-lap races. Not only that, but it's more than just back-to-back. It's a best-of-3 series here today. First of 2 is going to be taking the victory away. And we've seen 2-0 so often in the quarterfinals that we've seen today. Brought to you by RaceSpot TV, and earlier the Sim Speed eSports Network as well as things stand. I'm Jake Sperry, and handing over the reins to the king of ovals, it's Evan Pasoko.
Well, we're getting ready to get going here from Michigan International Speedway, Jake. And I'll tell you what, this is a very fun track to see with these NASCAR trucks out there. These 20-lap races, listen, there's not going to be a ton of time as they get out onto the racetrack now and qualify, but certainly, you mentioned you see a lot of the time this thing goes 2-0, and race number 2 we'll see that 100% inverted grid, so certainly it does give drivers an opportunity to get another breath of life maybe, but I'll tell you what, 20 laps around Michigan is not a lot of time at all. The tires barely going to start to be falling off on these trucks at that point, so you can certainly expect everybody to get a fair crack at this thing, and it'll be a fun night of action. Happy everyone's with us.
Yes, exactly. As far as qualifying stands, just looking at Tim Matsko, who's putting in his lap times, 42.704. He's the final truck on track that has yet to set the qualifying time. Chris Passini in the New York truck is unable to put a time together. So Tim Matsko then, Club DEATCH, and DEATCH having a good domination of things in qualifying standards because they are 1, 2, and 3. As things stand at the moment through Awara, Nobis, and Steinke as well. So here is Tim Matsko, who's going to go all the way down to the apron, trying to open up some lap time, 38.9. That's good enough for fourth, and it's a front two-row lockout here, Evan. And that just shows you DEATCH mean business here in ovals.
Yeah, that's going to knock Michael Kearns down to the currently 5th best time of the qualifying session, and most of the times that you see on the board right now are from drivers' second time around. 2 laps of qualifying allowed tonight from the Michigan International Speedway, so it'll certainly put the Club New York guys on the back foot, not something that you want to have early. There is one saving grace, and again, it is the fact that, well, this Michigan International Speedway, a big, fast, 2-mile, D-shaped oval, drafting is going to be a very big factor in this race. That's not to say that you can just throw qualifying to the wind and anybody can be competitive. Certainly we have the smaller car field like we have this evening. It is going to be more concentrated towards the front, but Kearns is kind of all by himself up there right now, P5. Curious if anybody else jumps up or down on the speed charts, but I think the draft is certainly going to save, the 14 division. He's going to need help, though. Listen, the draft is not the draft that you see at a Daytona or a Talladega. It's there, and, the draft is the one thing that allows drivers and teammates, especially in a race like this where it's half the field versus the other, to work together a little bit, but you nearly have basically just a small percentage of the control here like you do at a Daytona or Talladega, so certainly qualifying is going to be important. Listen, you missed your lap, that's it. You got to go out there, work for 20 laps. Starts are going to be key, obviously, with the inverts. We'll see how that plays out over the course of the possible 3 different races that we'll see this afternoon, but impressed what you're seeing at O'Hara. He's the, looks like half the field, top 5 cars or so are able to get sub 39-second lap times, all in the 38, so, I mean, that's a fast way around this place, top to bottom here this evening. If you kind of throw out Chris Passini, I know you mentioned, Jake, he really didn't have the best time. The 40.4 kind of a throwaway for him. If you discount that, first place all the way down to the second to last place truck at a qualifying, it's a 38.8 down to a 39.6. So everybody's separated by just less than 1 second on the speed charts.
And that 39.6 of Søren Kaloje, he is going to be on his second lap as he rides all the way up to the safer barrier and looking to put his time with 2 minutes left in qualification. He goes over the line and does a 39.381, improves time, but crucially not position here in qualifying, and was the last car to come and set a time. Henri Brycecorn is yet to put a time in the 66. He just about has enough time, but he's not in session, and that's going to be very, very telling here because, of course, Evan, one car not in session, that's a DEATCH car not scoring points, and that's so crucial here in terms of the racing.
Well, you saw as well with the 9 truck coming across the line there, lost the engine, so he was able to pick up regardless. Imagine if that truck was under power all the way to the start-finish line. I think he just got, a single lap in, and then obviously tried to get a little bit extra there, but you could see the smoke coming off of the 9 truck. So even with that, that tightens up the field to top to bottom within a half a second of each other, and that truck was blowing up for the final 10 seconds of that lap time. So, I mean, don't discount the 9 truck trucks, certainly it is going to really hurt him. That'll be second back of the grid. I know Chris Bassini's obviously kicking himself over the lack of a qualifying effort, but you do need a total team effort in this race. Obviously, with the guys from the two different sides going to be scoring the points, everybody's critical. So you would almost maybe prefer everybody to have a decent race, as opposed to you have one guy going out there and dominating, but everybody else having issues. Another key thing, you're going to have to stay out of trouble in these races also. Only 20 laps. What a mistake. That's pretty much it for you. Curious if maybe, in this first main event of the night, drivers going to be a little bit easier on themselves compared to later on. And then certainly if you find yourself in a desperate position late in race number 2, certainly things will ramp up. Again, this is a wide, sweeping racetrack that allows drivers to use multiple lines, mix things up. So certainly we could be in for a store tonight for a good one.
We certainly could be, Evan, and well, it's worth noting about what happened in the last event, because for New York, they went 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 when things happen. We are getting ready for action. The grid is going to be as follows here for the first race here at Michigan International Speedway.
We'll take a look top to bottom at your Race Spot TV starting grid. It is Rene O'Hara on pole position, the 38.850 best of all. It will bring us to the green flying tonight. Lisa Nobis on the outside of the front row will start in second. Mike Steinke makes up the inside of row 2, going to be third starting position. And Tim Massey on the outside. All those cars up inside of the top 4 tonight, as we mentioned, from the DEATCH Club. So your first Club New York driver, Michael Kearns, going to round out your top 5 cars in a qualifying session.
Harold Stadler will start this one from 6th with Hunter Reeves and Reich Rasmus 7th and 8th, meaning that New York certainly have a lot of, shall we say, strength in numbers just waiting behind. Patrick Kopp will start this one from 9th, and Jacob Klein for New York starts in 10th.
Just behind him, you'll find the number 1 truck. That is Daniel C. Newman in the number 11 spot. Mario Gonzalez, 777, going to be outside in 12th. Mike Grandy gets the unlucky number 13 starting spot tonight. We'll see what kind of noise the driver of the 33 truck is going to be able to make. It's basically an all Chevy lineup down the board, with Vincent Savona rolling off in a 14th position and rounded out your top 15 cars. That car that we were talking about towards the end of the Q session. A lot of work for the 9 of Soren Kloji.
Yes, and Chris Bassini will be the last vehicle in 16th position, as it's 8-on-8 action here at Michigan and 1 pace lap before we get ourselves underway. And I tell you what, Evan, I can't wait.
Going to be a lot of fun. Like we said, 20 laps, not a lot of time to get around this place. We can, talk a little bit more about what makes this Michigan International Speedway so fun. It is the fastest oval on a NASCAR circuit. 2-mile D-shaped oval. Everybody knows that, but it is those wide, sweeping corners, that makes this race so much fun. And of course, that 18 degrees of banking throughout this track is certainly going to be the key thing. Something else to keep in mind as this race goes on, drivers are required to make 1 mandatory pit stop. Needless to say, if you're running a full race length here in Michigan, you're not pitting inside of 20 laps. So drivers, I think, going to have to base the strategy for their race around that fact alone.
They certainly are, Evan. Of course, they don't have to take tyres, they don't have to take fuel, but of course they can't do it on the last lap, do what we call in road terms a Michael Schumacher. But the pace car, the truck, going to try and get itself onto pit road. We're getting ready.
Pace car off it in, and it's going to be O'Hara in front of the field. We're happy that you're with us for some weekend knockout racing for the iRacing World Cup on a Race Spot TV. Green flag in the air, off and away we go from MIS, and the dominant start for DEATCH. We'll see how it goes. It is O'Hara Nobis, 1-2, first time into the quarter as they get these trucks up to speed through the gears for the first time.
They certainly do here as they round 1 and 2, 1, 2, 3 and 4. No shocks, no surprises at the moment. Every driver looking just to pick a lane at the moment, as it will be a case of defensive action. 2 blockers just behind, allowing the front 2 to break away, as in 5th and 6th. You can keep an eye out on Michael Kearns, as he has himself now the starts of an attack here, going down the inside of Tim Matska, trying to work the inside, and already a pitter on the opening lap here of this event, and that is Harold Stadler taking the early call as one goes off into the infield. That's DEATCH.
Off and into the inside wall. That's going to be contact. So issues. That's Daniel C. Newman. The one truck is able to recover that thing. Doesn't go down it into the inside wall. But after contact with the 44, almost catastrophe for Newman there. And you also mentioned that Stadler came down to the pit lane. Very early dive. Very gutsy call. He went from the outside line in 4. Swept across the nose of about 2 different trucks. And barely locked that machine up before they were able to get down to pit road speed here at Michigan. That is just 55 miles an hour. You compare that to a side-by-side battle for the race lead amongst teammates that goes down into turn number 1 at 190 miles an hour. With the war on the outside. Got a little bit loose that last time at a 4. Is able to rein things back in. And when you see Stodike down on the outside of the racetrack, the 88 machine making some plays. Second position where the fight is at an inside move, but the 25 is not going to pay off. It might end up with 1 spot lost.
It is a spot loss, but it is to teammates, so that's going to be the okay factor. Look at that just behind, though. 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. All scrapping out together. 3 wide they go up the banking as there's going to be a taker onto pit road. Tim Matska and Michael Kearns decide they want to make the early call then here in this event, and that's going to be telling you've got to keep your eyes on a swivel, because we know that pit stop strategy can be so important. Watch the lane as well. All they have to do, stop in the box and get going again. It's a very short format. Nothing needs to be touched, and right now I think New York are playing the long game here, Ev.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with making this early call, and you go down, you do your stop and go, or maybe a touch and go, if you will, and get out back there. We were just talking about that traffic around P5 or 6, 2, 3 cars or whatever, side by side at any given moment. Listen, the draft is important, yes. You're running faster lap times when you're out there in the pack than you are by yourself, but we had already seen a couple of drivers get into some hot water on the opening laps of this one. I have no problem with drivers. You come down, you get out of the way, you basically knock that pit stop off, and you're able to run the final 15 laps of this race to the end uninterrupted. Most importantly, you're not going to have somebody breathing down your neck. I will say I'm surprised we have seen so many DEATCH and New York trucks come down together. Wouldn't have shocked me if a big group of one team or the other decided to come down to try to separate themselves. That way when you get back out there on the racetrack, you're certainly not fighting. But the complexion up front's pretty much evened out to this point. You've got another car going to come down to the pit lane. That's Lisa Novus. So second place drops off and away. And really just a Wara from that contingency. A DEATCH cars who qualified up front is still running there in P1.
And it's very telling, actually, looking down towards the bottom of the field, because Mike Steinke, who was there in 3rd position, he's just seen Soren Koloje go past him, but he's got Chris Passini charging him. Passini did not get the best qualifying in, but looking at what he was able to do in the 2 races earlier, I'd say he's probably the fastest driver in that New York team, and he is hunting down the driver who came down in from 3rd position. I think Passini is going to be on for some really good points for this New York team, and is the cat amongst the proverbial pigeons.
Certainly a guy that knows his way around the ovals. Listen, you would expect that obviously the New York guys have a little bit more track time just by purview, but everybody gets out there, practices. It's going to be a fair shot. You'll see he'll come up, Passini that is, in a 15 truck with that speed as other drivers try to blend back out onto the racetrack. Passini is going to be able to get around Cloche on the outside right there, and you'll kind of end up in the Klein Cloche sandwich as he's behind teammate, the 1-2-3 of Jacob Klein, who last time by was scored in the 8th position. And all of a sudden now, as they swap out now to 9 and 10 in the running order, majority of these trucks have come down to the pit lane. Looks like Mario Gonzalez just wrapped up a stop. So is Patrick Kopp. Mike Reisman also. So just looking up front now, also Vincent Simone. He comes down from 3rd. We're just waiting on Awara and Reeve, I believe, 1st and 2nd position. At DEATCH and a Club New York car running up front are the only drivers who have yet to come down and complete pit service. And I mean, the gap for the 24 machine, I talk about pitting early to get away from other trucks. That's not what the 24 needs to do. All on his own out at the front of the field right now. That's a 2.3 second gap back to 2nd.
Yes, but the worst thing is he's running into traffic, and there's no cautions here in this very short format of racing here, Evan. So what they're going to have to be careful about is if there is an incident, they could get caught up in it, and that could be some major points that go in. If I was one of the team managers, I'd say just stick yourself in and make yourself a stop before you have to deal with any traffic who could, in theory, go and make blocking factors. Look at the train, though, on the back stretch. You've got 4 straight New York cars chasing down Mike Stenke and Lisa Nobis. And this is fantastic work then from the team, using the draft to try and bring themselves back into play with some major midfield points.
And a lot of that was just a couple of early race moves. You'll see that 4-car freight train there that is chasing up onto the back of the 88 machine of Stanicky, as you mentioned, is 5th position right now. Mike Racemus, also Jacob Klein in 6th, Chris Passini 7, and Mike Grandy in the 8th spot. All these drivers started about mid-pack, but really the big gains were for Passini and Grandy. They started towards the back as the race leader, Awara, now comes down to the pit lane. That'll hand over the reins to P1 for the moment, to the 44 of Hunter Reeves. So right now New York's looking pretty good, but the big moves for that 4-car train, Passini, Grandy, early race passes, both of those drivers more than 5 positions gained from the start of this race. That's critical. Up front, obviously, is what gets a lot of the attention. You'll also kind of dog the guys that finish all the way at the back as now the 44 responds, and Hunter Reeves is going to come down to the pit lane, but mid-pack is where this race is going to be won or lost.
And Awara's actually lost position to Lisa Nobis, who now pick up the effective race lead, as all of a sudden it's now a swarm because Steinke has managed to make his way through, and now Chris Passini smells blood and wants to get through. Hunter Reeve was 2.5 seconds back by the time Awara was coming down onto pit road, so Hunter Reeve should be dropping back into the New York freight train, and all of a sudden this is a top 3 scrap, and Awara is having to defend pretty much hand over tooth in race 1.
And, I mean, your obviously conventions of oval racing still apply. You pit earlier, you're going to have fresher tires earlier. Not sure I'd really call it a short pit in this context, but you are running out there on older tires while all these other trucks are out there on better tires. And look at the 24. Awara, complete disregard for Chris Passini there. The 15 trying to get on the outside, and a 24 was having none out of Awara. Just needs to kind of get back into pace, get up to speed here. I think the 24 is going to have a legitimate shot, but I mean, it's not looking good right now. And a dive to the inside for Passini will make it side by side for 4th. The car that started on pole is trying to defend the car that started in 16th position.
Well, he's in there and he's trying to make it work, but again, using that low line, trying to make it work, but you can see a difference in strategy and up and under potentially for Awara, but he's got absolutely nothing to fight. So he tries to get his tyres back up to pace. He lit them up coming out of pit road, and I can't help but feel, Evan, he's trying to cool down those tyres to get themselves working again in that truck, and he knows that Mike Rasamas wants to get a bit of rasamataz and a move up into 4th position.
The problem is just very little time to be able to go out there, put a couple of very smooth laps in, and kind of get those tires back at 8th this time by 12 down at 8 laps to go in race number 1 on his best of 2 or 3 should say knockout round for the World Cup of iRacing. So maybe it's going to be a case of you're not going to win the race, but certainly take some lessons learned going into the second one. Listen, I don't think Awara is going to make up those 2.3 seconds back to Novus. I think the 25 truck was clearly the one who had the right call. Still pit early, not in that first swing of cars in the opening 1 or 2 laps, though. The gap from Novus back to Stanicky right now is 1.7 seconds, so it is safely in hands of the number 25 machine. And then, of course, you've got the Stanicky entry, Chris Passini, who we've been talking about 3rd, Awara pole sitter 4th, barely hanging on, as that 68 truck now is all over the bumper, and I would expect to move to the inside shortly if he gets a shot at it.
To go when they next pass the stripe, and it's not just the fact they are 1, 2, 4 at the moment why they're getting the points. Newman back 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, all club DEATCH, and that's where the bread and the butter are buttered, because they know that yes, you can win the race, but you need your entire team scoring points, and they are scoring points, and good points over this New York team. Yes, it's very, very close at the front, but it's no guarantees. Little wiggle from Awara, that's putting him under pressure from Mike Rasamas, who now moves high side, trying to make it work. And let's go Noah's Ark. Almost there, because I think Passini's thinking, how do I get past Steinke? He thinks about going low, but the door is shut.
And behind them a fight also as Awara now at a 24, going to have to defend down low. But on the outside of the racetrack, it's Rasamas who's going to have that big run of those 18 degrees of banking, and a huge straightaway here on the backstretch at Michigan pulls him now with a half a car length advantage. Side by side again, they go into turn 3. It is going to be a lot more difficult for that truck on the inside to pick back up the throttle compared to the outside. And again, these long straightaways certainly pay off. Whoever has the better quarter exit, that time it's going to be very slowly, but Rasamas does get the spot, so now give 3rd and 4th position to the Club New York trucks.
And that's very, very good damage limitation. But what they really want is Piscini to find a way past Steinecker, just at the moment looking low and getting the run that's needed. Pulls back into line, trying to get a little bit more out of it, as it will be 4 to go at the stripe. And he just decides, okay, this is a little bit of a waiting game. Let's play chess at 275 kilometers an hour, or whatever it is in miles an hour, because he goes low now, picks it up on the exit, and all of a sudden he's positioned Steinke into a position of weakness.
It's going to be tough here for Steinke on the outside of the racetrack to be able to pinch him back down. Piscini could force him up if he wants to, and I think the 88 machine, realizing that these two cars go into the corner, not negotiated about real estate, they both rack out, not going to be good for anybody. He still wants those critical third-place points. He'll certainly challenge if Piscini opens up the door, but Chris Piscini with a pretty easy pass there for second and third. 3 laps to go this time by. I promise you that the driver of the 88 machine is very aware that 4 out of the bottom 5 trucks in this race right now are from Club New York. That is not good for their hopes.
But they have Mario Gonzalez chasing down Tim Matska and Soren Kolodjec, so there is a chance of getting it back. Also, you have to remember, Jacob Klein in 6th position has actually found Awara, who is fading and fast here in this race. And if Klein can get up there, that's, again, more points that can be put into the bank for New York, and they know what they get. Lisa Nobis has just driven the perfect race, and she knows exactly that. It's rare to see women in sim racing, and she is proving that they are just as strong, if not faster, than the men.
Yeah, what we saw earlier with Awara started out of pole position is that the 24 used that clean air to get off the way. Nobis found herself on the outside of the front row in second, under fire a little bit early on, but just called the perfect race. Listen, 20 laps, there's only so much the strategy can go in either direction, but clearly stayed away from some of the battles, and that's why we hadn't talked too much about the number 25 machine up until she ends up in a race lead. That's a good thing. You stay out of the contested battles, you get up front, take this thing over, and, well, admittedly, I'm surprised Awara is not doing as good right now.
Kolodjec got a shot from Mario Gonzalez, tried to shut the door through one, didn't have anything to go, and not only that, has lost 2 positions. Michael Kurtz has managed to pull one away after his very slow pit stop. So as we come to the white flag, Evan, New York are making major moves in the second half of this event.
That's going to be 2 critical position gain toward the back. Look for that if this thing's going to be tight coming down to the end of race number 2 to see who is going to win this thing, or if we're going to have to go to the tiebreaker. But the last lap is underway. White flag in the air for Nobis up front. The Chris Piscini entry has been closing in about a half a second in the last 10 laps or so, but 1.3 seconds still going to be far and away too far off the back end, and it is going to be the 25 all on her lonesome. Final time in turns 3 and 4 for race number 1, this knockout round. It's the perfect race for your outside pole sitter, and it'll be a win for Club DEATCH. Lisa Nobis wins from Michigan. Chris Piscini leads it second for Club New York, but behind them it is going to be Bayek Steinke in third. Of course, Mike Rasabas there also. That's about, though, with the even back and forth amongst the club splits, because I should say, because Renee Awara with a critical result P6 right there as well to round out your top 5, should say.
Yeah, and had a very, very strong showing of things. And I have to say, Evan, that was some very, very respectful racing. We had a couple of little issues here and there, but nothing dramatic as we look at things there. 6th position was very, very strongly run there by Klein, as we have so much more that's been going on with that race. And we are getting ready for race number 2, which happens straight after. 6th position went to Jacob Klein, 7th for Mike Grandy, Daniel Newman 8th, Patrick Kopp 9th, and Tim Matska rounded out 10th.
Then you continue on through the finishing results through all of this. Obviously, rest of the drivers, you're talking about the struggle that we saw for those mid-pack and back, where, again, this race could really be won or lost to kind of round things out. But certainly New York at a couple of critical spots back there, as you see. Limited the damage a tad bit, but again, it is still going to be an uphill battle. And the interesting thing now as we head into the next race is that, of course, it is going to be an inverted grid, so it gives those drivers trailing a good shot to try to make up some time here. Like we said, qualifying top to bottom was only separated by a little bit more than half a second, so that speed top to bottom isn't a huge difference. Don't think that the guys at the back are just going to walk all over everybody else.
I do worry, though, Evan, a little bit about the concertina effect, because you've got the slow guys at the front, the quick guys at the back. I think that some drivers are going to be a little bit desperate to try and get through, finish this off in a 2-0. And I think that's the last thing some drivers want, because if some big names end up crashing out, yes, they'll be at the front for race number 3, but I don't think that any team wants to go to a race 3.
And nobody, I mean, obviously the losing team for the first one does, but I mean, that's going to be pressure-packed. Stop if you see it. Listen, this is the race now where these drivers are going to be working a lot more in the teams, on the radio channels. They got spotters, crew chiefs, all that good stuff at a sim with them. They're going to be talking what's the point situation. You start points racing. It's not something you want to do as a driver, but it's something that you might have to do. As let's look at how the running order is going to shake up for race number 2. John King, pole position on this one, behind the wheel of the number 7 Teed machine. Actually looks like those back 2 cars don't even make it through, so to be Harold Sadler who negates back 2. Pole position, Hunter Reeve on the outside of the front row, so that is going to be the makeup. They finish the back 2 spots in the first one. They will finish, or they will start race number 2 in the top 2 spots. Of course, full running order going to go across at the top of your screen, but the points are in from the first race, and it's not good for Club New York. We were kind of expecting that, Jake. The damage may have been hit already. 67 points for DEATCH and 54 for New York.
It was only 13 points. It's a lot closer than a lot of other races, so I think DEATCH are on the defensive at the moment. New York look aggressive, and they've got 5 in the top 6. Let's see how race 2 pans out.
If they can convert 5 of those top 6, that'll be critical for them. Pace car going to go off and in, and we'll see what the New York guys want to do. It's their time to control in the World Cup of iRacing. Green flag in the air. Let's go. Heat race number 2, as it is Stadler to bring us to the green flag, and you'll see they'll start to spread high and wide. The first time they get down to the corner, already a couple of drivers peeking, but more or less still 2 lanes of traffic into the turn.
It is very much 2 lanes of traffic as Stadler holds everybody off, as there's a little bit of looking from towards the rear, trying to muscle their way through, but it is pretty much pick your lane at the moment. Find a partner, find a bit of a space, find a hole, and try and work it as they head into 3 and 4 then for the first time in this second race. No problem still from Stadler, but look at the Germans, because Kaloche and Newman have moved themselves to 2nd and 3rd, and look at the swarm just behind of New York. They need to help their man.
Yeah, they are all in the middle of the pack, which is, I mean, it's better than to be in those back 4 DEATCH cars, but certainly all of a sudden early in this one, DEATCH controls this race with Stadler leading, Cloche in 2nd, and Newman 3rd. They got a good grip of the field right now as they come to quarter number 2. Side-by-side challenge for 2nd. Newman to the inside of Cloche. Not that big of a run, but I have a nose as they get down to turn number 3, so we will see a challenge for 2nd spot, and maybe Michael Kearns for the 4th spot can get up there. But look at that. It's about 6 New York cars in a row, or 7 of the middle 8, and now we're going to see those drivers come down to the pit lane. Kearns drop it in.
Kearns going early, as is Rene Awara, trying to get out of it. Awara a lot more aggressive when it came to the brakes, and was close right up to Kearns, who was very pedestrian, definitely did not want to speed coming onto the lane. And now it's 2-lane traffic, so the Germans 1, 2, 3, but then it's the train being pretty much affected by Lisa Nobis here, who's making the charge, trying to side draft her way up through the field. Chris Passini is on the outside, but it's a case of they're all going to try and follow the line, but as soon as Passini wants to take the line, take the toe, it's all going to be there for Nobis there on the inside, and now Nobis, I think, decides it's time to come down onto the lane, as does Grandy, as also does Steinke.
And now we'll see how confident she is in the speed of that truck, because in the first race, Nobis pitted at lap 5, crossed it over the 6, and again, they pretty much put her in the nice pocket of not having to deal with many of these fights. So he'll take herself out of a battle. She comes down to the pit lane now. We'll see if a race-winning call can be made a little bit earlier. Still a lot of trucks though out front. It is the 3 DEATCH trucks, followed by the 4 New York trucks behind them, and they dive down to the inside, a challenge for position. Looks like that is the number 1, 2, 3 machine of Jacob Klein, who has admittedly been rather quiet tonight for the Club New York guys. They're about to double team here, it looked like, try to get to the inside and the outside of our once pole sitter Harold Stadler, who is getting pushed now off and into the corner by Mike Rassimas. So pushes him down and out of the way, and we'll end up keeping that DEATCH truck in front. But watch here, you kind of unsettle that number 30 Dodge machine into the turn. You can run off at 2, but can't get down low in time.
Goodbye to the niceties. It's time to bump and bang because Robin is racing. Rasamas going high through turn number 3 and 4 and looking to try and pick another pocket. Second decides to dive down onto the lane in Daniel Newman. So we'll decide it's time to come down to the lane. Klein decides to follow, who has been the sleeper agent of this race so far. But Rasamas now looking to attack Stadler now for the podium as things stand.
Yeah, also big news with Lisa Dobis there. First time that truck came down to the pit lane, she missed her pit stall, drove right by it. So this second trip down to the pit lane is what the 25 is going to need to satisfy that requirement for the one mandatory pit stop. Again, drivers don't have to take any tires nor fuel. It is simply a touch to go in the box, but you do need to get into the box, come to a complete stop. She did not, so she'll have to come back around. And again, no opportunities for yellow flags or restarts in these 20-lap sprints. Her night pretty much done as another truck going to dive off and down to the pit lane from second place. Harold Stadler's in.
Harold Stadler releases Rasamas to attack Soren Koloje, but it's worth keeping an eye on Awara, who had an absolutely lightning quick stop. It didn't register on our timing systems that we have here, and Awara has got himself out ahead of Daniel Newman by a pretty comfortable margin. So we'll see where Stadler will come out in comparison. I think that Stadler is going to be behind, but very, very crucially at the moment, it seems that DEATCH are able to get their fast drivers through using clean air and qualifying lap times.
And I'm curious if they're going to allow the 24. I think the 24 is going to have to come back down. As you see, Thanadabashid in, Koloche feeling the pressure for Rasamas will give up the race lead. And the 9 truck comes down to the pit lane, but Awara will represent what is a second car on the night from the DEATCH camp who came down to the pit lane completely missing the pit stall. I think the thing that's getting those drivers in particular is the flipped running order. Of course, the way these qualified positions work and the way that we have inverted the grid, driver's not necessarily sure where they're looking on the pit lane. That's a good stop in and out for the 9 truck. Will get back out there, blend into traffic, but a couple of mistakes, all from the DEATCH camp on missing their pit stalls onto pit road. I'm fully expecting Awara to come back down in to serve that. Otherwise, I don't think that finish is going to hold for the 24.
No, I don't think it will either, and Awara will know this, and it's a big, big mistake, and it's one that you cannot afford to make time and again. Rasamas then will take the lead as Kolodziej has come down and made his stop. He is out and he is away. He's with Tim Matska and co. So the train certainly forming here. Newman ahead of Chris Bassini, who's making his charge. Awara needs to come down and make the stop again, but crucially, it is a couple deciding to stay out, and on cue, Mike Rasamas at the end of lap 9 is going to make his trip down onto pit road.
And that's pretty much the cookie-cutter strategy. Rasamas is going to come in to make this a halfway point. Teal Pippen, look at all the Club New York trucks following him. Revid right behind Mario Gonzalez also in the 777 machine. Obviously, all these cars coming in with one another. They were the only drivers, I should say, that had not yet come down and completed a pit service this evening. Also on that pit strategy front, it looks like a couple of drivers, and I believe the Club New York guys were requesting the officials to look at a pit stop of Mike Stonicky. And the 88 truck went back, checked it myself, looked good, and race control just confirming with them that it was a good stop for the 88. But certainly the teams are keeping an eye on each other and making sure that nothing funky is going on. Listen, there's a lot of time that can be made up or lost when you're on the pit lane, and you'll see your at-time race leader now blend back up and into the racetrack. No longer in the top spot. That honor going to go all the way up at the front of the field, I believe, to Rene Awara in the 24. We got to be still believe is going to have to come back down to the pit lane again. Unless somebody knows something that we don't.
Well, I think that the stewards want to keep an eye out, and I think they're going to try and keep Awara out there for as long as possible, give help to Daniel Newman. Let's not forget that Newman would be the effective race leader of this one, trying to keep Bassini out of the way. The gap, 1 second and 7 thousandths, so right on the fringes of the draft. Got Bassini there half a second back, and I think any advantage to keep Daniel Newman ahead. I think they want to be winning races because the most points is the biggest bang for your buck.
Well, certainly with Awara, he wants to help the one Wannabishi down, but the problem is, even if the one's picking up a little bit of draft there, first to second position, Chris Bassini is half the distance to Newman than Newman is to Awara, so Bassini's only closing in on the one, so if you are going to, and there goes the 24, so yeah, kind of has to come down pit road. I was going to say, maybe you keep him out there as a sacrificial lamb, you just try to pull that truck up for as much as you can, but Awara did need to come down, and again, you got to keep in mind, he was on the oldest tires on the racetrack, so I think any gap that Piscini would have been making up would have been just simply, well, those two cars were faster behind him than Owara was. So not going to be the result that we saw in race 1 as Owara comes in, completes his pit stop, and just like that now, it is Daniel C. Newman, the driver who will be under attack, leading this race with 8 laps to go the next time around. And well, you can see the gap that the top two have pulled. It's going to be a good fight. Chris Piscini wants this one with a 15 Chevrolet, but they are over 2 seconds ahead. You see the big gap out of the back end. Just now you see Klein, Rasabas, and Grandy, 3 New York trucks, 3rd, 4th, and 5th on the racetrack, watching from afar.
Yes, but Steinecke, you remember, Club DEATCH, he's in 6th and he's right on the back. He's the wolf trying to pick up and blow down the 3 little pigs. House, it seems, is into the wall slightly there. Goes Jacob Klein. This might give Rasmus a chance. No, he's going to bump him forward. But for the lead, Piscini is looking. We've seen the patience of Piscini, but will we see the passion of Piscini trying to make a move? Newman, he knows that all he can do for his team is try and stay out in front as much as possible. For Chris Piscini in the 15, he knows time is of the essence, and he's looking high side, trying to play that tactical chess once more, trying to open up a move, and once more using all of his road tax available.
He do it exactly what he can, but behind them, the 88 machine makes the move down low. So Mike Steinecke is going to break that New York stronghold. They were, as we mentioned, running 3rd, 4th, 5th. And then behind them, it was a 4-car line of the DEATCH trucks. And now a battle for the race lead is on. To the inside goes Chris Piscini, and he is going to make it look easy 2nd time tonight. We've seen the 15 go low, and I can promise you, Daniel C. Newman says that this race isn't over. He'll tuck in line, and I would not be surprised at all if the Wonder Machine comes back at him. But Chris Piscini now working from the point of advantage. He's your race leader. 6 laps to go.
He is, but it's not decisive because Daniel Newman seemingly is not going away at this stage. Little wiggles from the pair of them trying to keep themselves all afloat. Let's not forget there's another good battle going on right now, and that's with Michael Kearns, who's trying to break up the 3 train of DEATCH cars. Tim Matska is the one under pressure in front of him, Stadler and Koloche. So this is going to be a really, really important scrap. The minor points as well. We've got to keep an eye on that as Newman looking low, looking to try and take that away. It's going to be 5 to go as things stand, but Newman is trying to open up a pocket on the inside, just about covered.
You hold it for the moment. Chris Piscini knows how to play chicken like that. You leave a little bit of the inside open. You can kind of coax the driver behind you into going to make the move. If you run down on that white line, you are not going to make a pass. You cannot get back into the throttle. And, well, sure, Michigan International Speedway doesn't show up as a progressively banked racetrack. You do need to be about in the middle where that little bit of rubber gets put down. I understand it's a short race, but every little bit helps. And, listen, Piscini's only going to leave an amount of space on the inside open that he's comfortable with. And curious again how critical. We questioned this at the start of the evening all the way through the first race and out of this one as well, Jake. How critical is this spot going to be? If it means maybe that if you don't get it, you have to go into a 3rd race, or if Newman could possibly be the difference maker at finishing 2nd or 1st, that might dictate just how bad the one truck wants this.
Yes, but Steinecke just behind has just seen Klein and Rasmus change positions. Klein is the slower driver, so Steinecke now is seeing, okay, I've got the weaker lamb first. They're going to sacrifice that here, but time, of course, of the essence. It's 3 to go at the stripe, being led by Chris Piscini. So Steinecke is going to try and make positions as quickly as possible. Look behind, though. Michael Kearns has been stuck behind a certain Tim Matska, who has played great blocker here to try and make sure no more New York cars. They may love New York, but they certainly are not loving Michigan for overtaking.
Yeah, and when you get to this point in the race, certainly things start to stretch out like at any racetrack, but I think it is one of the best equalizers. Right now, as we sit, it would be in favor of Club New York, and that means that we would be heading to a 3rd winner-take-all race to decide this elimination round between Club DEATCH and Club New York. Does something still change? Well, if it is, it's going to happen quickly. 2 laps to go this time by. Piscini's gap for the race lead grows, and I don't see any other immediate battles on the racetrack besides a couple of drivers looking, but not close enough to make those moves quite yet.
Newman and Kearns both had wiggles coming out of 4, so they are pushing at this stage to try and get everything out of the trucks. but they know that the last thing that they can afford to do is put it in a safer barrier and understand that there is no more positions that they will gain. They will lose so much if they find the wall late, but not much going as things stand for anyone to make a move. It looks like we could be going to race 3, and my goodness, it would be front foot advantage to DEATCH if they do here, Evan, but we know New York have that ability to fight and fight so hard.
And clearly, obviously, you know, the reversed running order from heat race, or I should say just race number 1 in this, obviously helped the New York guys out as we try to close this thing out. They had the better qualifying spots, and most importantly, they didn't let it go. You see that shot there. 4 New York cars in the top 6 doing a very good job. And for Chris Bassini, a lot of clean racetrack in front of him. Final time as he comes up and into the gas at turn number 4, and he'll take one back for the New York drivers. Chris Bassini wins race number 2 atop Daniel C. Newman. So the advantage up at the front of the field goes to the New York drivers. But again, critical 3rd place result for Mike Rasabas. Of course, also Jacob Klein there in the number 4 spot. And then another of the DEATCH drivers, Ibayek Staniki, to round out your top 5. Good result for Chris Bassini. Like I said, that P17 that he had in P16, I should say, he had in qualifying earlier tonight, not indicative of the speed he's gone. And as we take a look at the results, this one's going to come down to one race. As top to bottom, we mentioned Bassini, Newman, Rasabas, Klein, and Staniki. Mike Grandy also comes home in the number 6 spot for this one. Soren Kaloche in 7th, with Harold Stadler at 8th position, Tim Matzke in 9th, and at our top 10, that's Michael Kearns.
Patrick Kopp 11th, with Hunter Reeve 12th, Mario Gonzalez 13th, and Vincent Simone in 14th. But crucially, 15th and 16th, who will start 1 and 2 for the next race in about 2.5 minutes time, will be Lisa Nobis and Rene Awara, arguably the 2 fastest drivers, Evan, for Club DEATCH. Will be 1 and 2, and Bassini is starting right from the back. This is probably the best scenario out of race 2 from a losing position that they could have.
Certainly, and you look how tight the intervals are. Listen, New York certainly gets a lot back there, but they win that one by a 70-51 margin, so an actual better performance for New York in that second race than what we saw at a DEATCH in the first race. Now, of course, this race is going to be the decider, and certainly with Awara and Nobis on the front row, those are 2 very fast trucks. I think the 24, maybe follow the 25 down to the pit lane this time through. Maybe that'll help them out with these drivers. Now, 3-minute warm-up session. I don't think you're really going to learn anything extra. I think most of the learning these drivers done is going to be over the course of the 2 races that we've already seen, specifically how to navigate those pit stops, if pitting early, just as a outright strategy is the call, or if maybe only pitting when you find yourself in a battle is certainly the way to go. But don't forget where your pit stall is. Maybe I'd keep an extra eye on that while I'm sitting down here on pit road 3 minutes or so until we actually take the green flag for race number 3.
And I have to feel that the Club DEATCH managers will be drumming it into their drivers. You must hit your box. We made 2 big mistakes that cost us points here in the form of Nobis and Awara in that event. They would have gone 2-0 without it, so they'll be drumming that point home. New York managers, they'll be saying, we've got a chance here in this one. We've pulled it back. We've leveled it. We've got old Mo helping us in momentum, and that's going to be the telling factor. This is where nerves come into play here, Evan. This is not going to be the case of the best drivers win. This is going to be who is the most clutch when it comes to racing.
And each team, I know it's kind of, a conventional thing to say, but each team is only as strong as its weakest link in this thing. You need a full team performance. Trade out a bunch of cars packed in there inside of the top 10, as opposed to maybe the race win. Now, again, it's hard to coordinate that many different variables over the course of a short 20-lap race, but certainly based on what we've seen, strategy in the pit stops is important, but I'd put it at about 25%. The start here, getting spots, and then, of course, when you blend back out onto the racetrack, being the driver at the back of maybe a 2 or 3 car pack, as opposed to being the one at the front, means you can only go forwards instead of only going backwards. Sometimes that's just how the cards draw, but we are certainly going to see an exciting one as we are getting set to go to the grid. It is going to be race number 3, tiebreaker, to determine this one.
Sudden death It is he and she who get themselves up to the front and stay there, who are going to take themselves that victory. And Evan, I have to say that this has been a titanic scrap, and I think New York have shown they've done justice here today. Definitely rated as underdogs coming into this one compared to DEATCH, who are the 3 seed. And I have to say, New York have shown up.
They've certainly shown up. They put on a show, but, you know, these are guys who are very familiar with this kind of race, and I think it's almost a sense of pride for them that they pull this one out. It is going to be a ton of fun, and as you see, the trucks are down on the pit lane, so let's introduce you to your starting grid for race number 3, and that is a critical front row for the 24 truck of Rene Owara and Lisa Nobis. Going to be on the outside of the front row, the 24 and the 25, set to be critical positions. And then in the middle of all of that, you do have a lot of New York trucks. Then Vincent Simone will start from the number 3rd position. Again, right now it's going to show P5. Top 2 cars technically on the grid is scratched. It'll be Simone in 3rd, Mario Gonzalez rolling off 4th, and then another New York car in the 44 of Hunter Reeve to round out your top 5.
Patrick Kopp for DEATCH will start 6th, but it's Michael Kearns in 7th, also for New York. Then you've got the Germans coming in, DEATCH, Matska, Stadler, Koloje. They are 8, 9, 10.
Continuing on through, Harold Stadler, big factor in a lot of races thus far. Going to have to come from behind. He'll start in 11th position. You mentioned Koloche there to round out your official top 10. Mike Randy is going to be 11th position for this one. Mike Stonicky in 12th. Jacob Klein gets 13th. Mike Rasabassa in 14th. And Daniel C. Newman, Chris Passini. So top 2 cars all the way at the back. Watch for those drivers to try to make some noise. They've got a long way to go, though, admittedly, here from the 2 mile. That is Michigan International Speedway. So a split 1-2 as DEATCH took the first. New York came back, and it all comes down to this. Only one can be able to move on first day of eliminations.
Watch for the coordinated start from Club DEATCH. Owara and Nobis will be talking with each other, saying, this is what we need to do for the start. Give ourselves the gaps to Simone and Gonzalez. And from there, look at that high side. All Germany, and they will run that high side all the way to the end. It's crunch time.
New York's got about 4 trucks in the back 6. Those are going to be the critical ones if they want to be able to pull out the points race win this afternoon from MIS. Pace car down it in, and the field is indeed in the hands of the 24 of Rene Owara as they pace at 70 miles an hour to the restart zone. Let's go racing. Race number 3.
Oh my word, they're all gone off at the start. It's a big, big pile-up, and it was on a defensive drive coming from, I believe that was one of the New York cars who was trying to hold up the train, who all decided to go early. That was from 4th position. That would have been Mario Gonzalez there, Evan, having a massive, massive defense. He checked up, tried to block everyone from going around the outside on the start, and just like that, this race has had a massive complexion change.
And you'll see it on the replay here. Watch for the 777. Gonzalez is going to get tire spin right there. He doesn't get a good jump as they come into the restart box. He'll go up to protect, and that does is it checks up the 13 truck, gets hit by the 78 behind, and it is an accordion effect that starts with the DEATCH trucks, but I think in the end, more New York drivers may have been involved. And listen, the 77 knew that nobody could pass on the outside on a restart, so we'll have to see who picks up the pieces the best. But the first time tonight we see a big incident. It comes on the start of race number 3, and look up front. I know I said it's a draft that's not like a plate track, but don't tell Vincent Simone that. The 20 truck pushes the number 25 as he looks for the race lead, and it is going to be a very early pit stop for Rene Owara.
But he wants to get out of the trouble, and he has done, which does leave it 2, 3, and 4. But a lot of names going out. No fast repairs, but crucially for Mario Gonzalez, he will be under investigation from the stewards, and the stewards will act. If he has to go for a drive-through or anything like that, a stop and hold, Gonzalez could be losing some massive points here for this New York team. This is going to be a very tough race, and I think Lisa Nobis is understanding that even, say, the weaker drivers like Simone, they have that opportunity to attack. But watch now as Nobis just running that bottom line, doesn't have to deal with any dirty air through the corners, having some very good driving, but it's going to take the early call again.
Another interesting decision with no dirty air up front. Would have all been surprised if she went a little bit longer, but it is going to be a pit stop on just lap number 3. Same time she came in the last time. Critical that you find your box. The 24 was one of the, or 25 I should say, sorry, one of the trucks that missed the pit stop that last time through. And of course, able to account for the revised running order and therefore a revised pit road placement. In and out, it's going to be a good stop for the number 25 machine. We are going to keep an eye to see if race control indicates that there is any sort of review due up for the 777 Mario Gonzalez. We've seen them mention that a situation is under review in some of the previous races. So far, no indication from the tower. We'll keep an eye on that. And well, Gonzalez is talking about him. He'll come down to the pit lane from third. He's lucky that that car wasn't involved in that incident. He'll try to keep it clean up behind. Oh, nearly a wreck. What a save for Soren Kaloche, who got sideways on the brakes and almost packed it into the pit road wall. Is able to hang on, but I'll tell you what, that was awfully close to a speeding penalty.
It was close, and let's not forget, 3 DEATCH cars are out in the opening instant, and he's missed his box as well, I think Kaloche has.
That's a penalty.
Oh, well, it's a penalty, yes, it certainly is. And there is Mario Gonzalez as well. But also, it was only 1 car from New York that was out, and that's Chris Passini. They're all running otherwise, and that's very telling because that means that 3 DEATCH cars are scoring right at the bottom of the pile. Advantage New York.
Well, you saw in that shot down onto the pit lane, there's a ton of trucks onto the pit lane with damage, trying to get service. Again, we believe Kaloche just now going to finish serving his penalty. He's able to now get out of the pit lane and blend back up. When was the last time we saw trucks stopped in the pit lane? Maybe 1 or 2 trucks over the course of the race had wrecked out of this thing, but there is a ton of stuff going on pit road right now, and now that's a tough decision for those drivers as another truck comes in and you can see the front end damage on Rasimas there. The sim's going to give you an opportunity to get that truck fixed up as much as it can. You don't need to sit down there, say, for 3 or 4 minutes. You can, so these drivers are going to have to make a judgment call. How long do I want to sit down there and get this truck fixed? We'll also not give it up too much time, but look at all those trucks down on the pit lane. 3 New York trucks in right now, trying to get those cars repaired as a clean DEATCH truck comes in for a scheduled stop.
Gonzalez in for a second straight time as well, maybe speeding on pit exit or serving said penalty as Daniel Newman decides to leave. So that's going to open up things a little bit then in this final race. And well, it is winner takes all. There is no here's or there's. Hunter Reeve comes in from second position now as well at the end of lap number 7. Here at Michigan for this final race, but my goodness me, this is just a case of do the math and hope that it comes out good, because I count only 4 DEATCH cars running at the moment.
It's only 8 trucks and a lead lap, so certainly this is not a situation that we've been presented with thus far. The race lead for the moment in the hands of the number 20 machine of Vincent Simone. 20 machine who started this race in 5th position up front has yet to come down for scheduled, I guess I really should say, the required pit stop that all of these drivers need to make. So Lisa Nobis is going to be the one who wants to go to the race lead in this. Again, those could be critical points for DEATCH. She'll take over 2nd position as Hunter Reeve there is just now exiting the pit lane. So the gap between Novus and Simone is 25.9 seconds. That's how much the 20 has to work with when it comes to coming down and making that stop to go and getting back out and onto the racetrack if he has a help maybe of maintaining the race lead in this one. But I wouldn't at all be surprised if Novus and Awara go back to 1-2 with that 20 machine still outstanding.
Yes, and we've also got some very good work going on. Cone to cone's about 26 seconds here. Got a great battle. Grandy and Steinke having a fantastic scrap, and both of them, this could be the turning point here. If maybe Steinke can get himself ahead of Grandy here. It seems that Mike versus Mike, this is a big mic battle that could end up with one of them dropping the mic and taking home the plaudits.
And this is mid-pack stuff that we were talking about, how critical it is going to be. Grandy trying to hold off Steinke here, and those are 2 obviously opposing team cars. Maybe tough to tell at a first glance for the 88 machine, but that is one of the Club DEATCH entries, missing the vibrant colors that everybody else is running. But don't mistake the 88. Don't let him get lost in all this, that he is one of those DEATCH cars. And right now holding out the final couple of spots on the lead lap. Still think that this is going to be won by maybe any drivers who are able to limp home, but I mean, Piscini, Kopp, Matsky, Stadler, Koloche, Rasabas are the cars who have multiple laps down, and many of those cars are stationary on the pit lane. It's about a little bit more than a third of the field in this one. Major problems, and again, that all comes from that first lap incident.
It certainly does, but if things work out the way that they do, if Simone comes down onto the lane and relinquishes the lead, it could be DEATCH 1, 2, 3, because Daniel Newman is in 4th position right now, albeit, yes, he's fighting it out with Hunter Reeve. 7/10 of a second here. I think there's still worry here from this New York team. If they don't get any of the top 3 positions, I think DEATCH may have just walked out of here, maybe without an arm, maybe without a leg, but they may still walk out of here to the semi-finals against UK and Ireland.
I completely agree with you there. I think they're in the better spot now. Simone is going to have to pit. This is not a conventional race where you're going to be talking about the number 20 machine trying to stretch it on fuel and go to the end. You can do that. You're going to get black flagged and sent to the back. You have to come down to the pit lane. That is a requirement, and he is giving up tons of time here. He's not going to be the one that is going to challenge Nobis and Awara after pit stops. I mentioned that that gap was about 25.9 seconds a few laps ago. It is down to about 23 seconds. So that's lap time. That time for Simone was a 40, obviously on the older tires, a 40.6. Nobis just ran a 39.8, so that's 0.8 of a second that you're giving away every single time around the racetrack. So the hopes for Club New York cannot sit with this Tawny truck, because he's going to have to come in. He's going to have to sit with Reeve, Klein, and Grandy there, the 3 New York trucks that trail the 3 DEATCH trucks that should go to 1, 2, 3 in the running order.
And very crucially, I'd put Simone in, because that's another bit of work that you could get right into play with some other vehicles there, the likes of Newman, that will be in Newman's grill. And I think you need to put as much pressure as possible. Hunter Reeve, 40.2, 40 flat for Daniel Newman. He's breaking away from Hunter Reeve, which is very, very important, because that top 3 is looking secure. What isn't, though, is Mike Steinke here, because he is still just about within a second, maybe struggling with the damage to the rear, but he's still that 8th place. So vital for the long game here, especially with a lot of DEATCH cars right at the back, the likes of Kopp, the likes of Matska and Stadler and Koloje. It is the fact that Rasmus and Gonzalez and Kearns all running laps down, 9th, 10th, 11th. That could save New York.
Yeah, the fact that they're running is going to be the saving grace for them, because of the cars that are stopped on a pit road, not running, and are simply just falling down the running order. You have Saren Koloche, 12th position right now, who is 8 laps down, stationary on the pit lane for the DEATCH cars. Harold Stadler is running 13th position on pit road, not running. That is for the New York drivers. But then Matsky going to get back out on track. This is critical for that slow 78. You see how off pace he is? He is going to pass. He just passed Stadler. He's going to pass Koloche. That is another spot in the pocket of the DEATCH trucks. He's not running very fast, only 126 miles an hour. It's about 50 miles an hour off pace in the turn, but that is critical. 2 positions gained atop stationary trucks who are not doing what he's doing by tiptoeing around the racetrack.
But the issue is he's only gaining on DEATCH drivers, so it doesn't change anything for the long haul. And if anything, it's making him more of an issue out on circuit. It's racing just to finish, and I think that's a pride thing more than anything else. For the moment, at least, it seems that things are stationary in terms of the race. Still waiting for Simone to come down in and make that stop. Very crucially, he has 5 laps to go, and now it will be 4 across the line. So that's going to mean that he will be pitting incredibly late when it comes to this event, and will not have much time to react to where he comes back out again.
Yeah, we really haven't seen any kind of a run go this long at it. I think the critical thing for Matsky is he's able to pit, or rather I should say get around those cars that have pitted, and he makes 2 of the back 3 trucks in this race. New York drivers, as of now, live points, has New York by 1. But again, Simone has no choice but to come down and pit. So New York's going to have to find something else. And I mean, Reeve right now running over a second behind Newman. Klein is closer to his teammate, but that doesn't do any good if you swap out those spots. Grandy is with a teammate also, but down from the race lead comes Vincent Simone. So it is now going to be DEATCH with Nobis, Owara, and Newman 1, 2, and 3.
And it seems that the fairy tale of New York starts to slowly fade and stir as waking up will come the New York drivers as Simone's stop will come and go, and the race lead should be given to Lisa Nobis as DEATCH will now move pretty much into leading contention to make their way through. They haven't had this easy, but my goodness, it's been more of a war than it has been a light walk through the park.
When you look back on race number 2, the DEATCH trucks were in a very good position to win that race, but because everybody, their qualifying position was inverted, their pit stall selection changed. So a lot of those drivers, when they came down to the pit lane, didn't know where they were stopping. They blew right by their pit stalls, expecting them to be towards the end of the pit lane, and instead, because they therefore technically qualified back in the field, they were some of the first boxes, they missed them. So if that doesn't happen, DEATCH may go 2-0 in this thing. New York had an opportunity into this third race. They took advantage of those mistakes in race number 2 and needed to knock it out of the park in this one. And it appears at the moment that they're going to come up short. I don't see those 4 New York trucks, 4, 5, 6, and now with Stonicky taking over that break, so it's only 3 in a row, with Stonicky running now in 7th position. I don't see it happening. 1 lap to go this time by.
And it has been pretty good work from New York. They have taken DEATCH to the limit, but DEATCH have shown resiliency in the face of everything that has been thrown at them. That big crash on the front at lap number 1, and most crucially for Nobis, it is going to be 2 victories for her in a very much an even better than Danica Patrick drive.
Well, they saw the gap between the first one was about 1.5 seconds, and Nobis is only going to improve on that this time through. The big story going to be the 1-2-3 finish, but a tip of the cap to the 25 truck. 2 race wins and 3 for Lisa Nobis and DEATCH. She'll go to the outside and win in race number 3, just hoping that her teammates can bring it home. Owara finishes in 2nd. A fading Newman hangs on for 3rd, and that just may be the difference maker as the York trucks. P4 for Reeve and P5 for Jacob Klein come up short, some 7.5 seconds behind a blistering fast Nobis.
And that was the very key factor. Nobis and Owara started 1 and 2 in this event and have proven exactly why they're good. Mike Grandy, a great drive from 6, actually held off Mike Steinke towards the end. Vincent Simone, we saw right up the front in 8th position. Michael Kearns, a good lap down in 9th. So we get the results on our screen. Mario Gonzalez, he had the penalty to serve, remember, and that is 10th position, and how things could have changed.
10th position and out of this race. You see the top 9 finished. As we flip over to the second page here outside of your top 10, none of these cars make it full distance on this one. Credit to Mike Rashabas. He was able to go out there and run. So was Tim Matsky. So those 2 cars were on track, but everybody else out of this thing. Soren Kaloche in 13th position. Harold Stadler in 14th, and Chris Bussini can round out your top 15. Final car in this race, Patrick Kopp, out very early on, and it finishes in 16th position. And, well, you talk about that 1-point advantage that Club New York had. They really needed that top spot, because as the points come in, the most dominant performance of the evening goes to DEATCH in race number 3 with a 72-49 win.
And a big victory as well for DEATCH. They will feel like they have won the war. They will walk wounded over to Club UK and Ireland. And really a big rivalry when you talk the UK against Germany. You can go back to a World Cup and many other things, but it is going to be one of those things to look out for. That will be coming along next week, but more action as well here. More quarterfinal action to go, road and oval to play for. And Evan, I have to say that has probably been the best racing that we have seen so far from any of the races that we've seen in this World Cup of iRacing quarterfinal weekend.
Certainly drivers to qualify and all of that, they're gonna give it 100%, don't get me wrong, but when you start to get to elimination rounds, well, there's something just about that it makes it so fun. And we'll take a quick opportunity to step aside. When we come back to Michigan International Speedway, we'll recap this DEATCH versus New York elimination round. You want you to race Spot TV on the iRacing eSports Network. It's DEATCH on top from the Irish hills of Michigan.
Look to the outside as Tronke goes off. De Jong into second place.
I'm going for the switchback. Oh, pinpoint driving.
It's howling down to the inside.
Trying this contact though. As wide left of the racetrack. Chris Venner drives it back down underneath and he takes that second spot right back. Joker goes to Garrett Lowe.
Garrett Lowe should take victory with all that contact.
He's going to try and make the move around the outside the parabolica. That's not going to work, but he's going to try and get the cutback here. Get the run out the parabolica. That's beautifully done there. Makashube, there's a little bit of door banging as well.
The most realistic online racing sim ever made. This is iRacing. Detailed laser scan tracks, fully dynamic real world cars, and over 50 series to choose from. 6 online world championships offering over $100,000 in annual prizes. This is the original eSport racing game. This is iRacing.
Back live from the virtual Michigan International Speedway, where Race Spot TV's coverage of the World Cup of iRacing continues today on the iRacing eSports Network. An elimination round racing, always so fun. Happy that you've been with us. Still Evan Pasoko, Jake Sperry upstairs with you, with Paul Smith bringing us to you as we welcome into some post-race coverage of DEATCH versus New York. This one went the distance, 3 races required, but in the end of it all, it is going to be an impressive points tally for DEATCH. They sweep the top 3 when it mattered the most amongst a crazy and chaotic race 3. Then we saw a ton of cars onto the pit lane, and we kind of knew that would happen. We knew that as we went into the second race of the evening, Jake, that the drivers would have a better idea of the points, what the scenario was, and what they needed to do. But, I mean, I think it was very difficult for drivers to approach this last race with a level head because it was so crazy off of the start. Some trucks didn't even make it to the green flag with that early wreck.
That's very, very true, Evan. And I think that there was a lot of nervousness on the German side. They threw away a 2-0 with 2 very, very big penalties for going through pit road, and missing their boxes. So I think that it came down to who could hold off. I think Gonzalez was going to always try and goad a few of the German or the DEATCH drivers into a mistake. The mistake happened. The big wreck happened. It did favour that New York team, but I have to say, I think there was a bit of an error on the New York part through Vincent Simona, because if you put him in onto that pit stop earlier, around that halfway distance, You could put him in the draft, Evan. You could use him just to run behind as he was in the early stages, and that would have made all the difference. More pressure on DEATCH.
Well, we saw that very late pit stop for him. Nobis came down pit road on lap number 3. She goes on to be the eventual race winner. Whereas in the case of Simone, obviously we saw the number 20 truck stay out for so long. That pit stop came at lap number 16. So if it was about an 0.8 of a second advantage over the course of 13 laps, that's a ton of time that Simone had given away. You maybe get a spot from Stanicky, catching up to Grandy, who finished 6 seconds ahead of him. Wouldn't really have helped in the point scenario, but certainly it would have been one spot mid-pack for Stanicky, and it couldn't have hurt. I'll say that much. But I think the key comes down to the execution, not making those mistakes because of those errors in that race number 2, where 2 of the DEATCH drivers missed their pit stalls, had to come back in. It essentially took 2 out of the race, and you were talking about an 8 versus 6 battle. New York edges that one out. Coming into this one, obviously that nervousness is my big concern, Jake. Don't overthink it when you try to points race or when you try very hard to not make one mistake. Overthinking things can hurt you a lot, and I think that once this race got underway, maybe they could have breathed a little bit of a sigh of relief when we had that big incident on the front straightaway. Once they just got out there and raced, everything was able to hone itself back in for that club, and like we said, the most dominant race victory of the night comes in that third and final one with the 72-49 advantage.
They may have had the dominance, but I think if you're Paul Thurston as the leader of Club UK and Ireland, you're going to have a little bit of a smile seeing that event, seeing them go the distance, seeing Club DEATCH make mistakes. They know and understand that DEATCH team, yes, they've done very, very well to fight back. When the race settled down, they got to business and drove a sensational race as a team. But they know that DEATCH club does make mistakes. And that's going to be telling, because if there is any club out there that will capitalize on mistakes, the UK&I club is arguably the most well-organized when it comes to oval.
Yeah, you got to get a lot more polished. And we talked about coming into this one how the New York drivers just qualified into this one beforehand. So I think that almost helps them get into a little bit of a rhythm more. It's not like conventional racing. We're not talking about drivers running 3-hour races back to back. I don't think you get that physically or mentally tired. I think it almost gets you into a rhythm. I think that'll help DEATCH. I think this win's going to give them confidence. They should be able to clean things up. But again, there's always that haunting thought in the back of your mind. What if this thing turns out like the other one? You don't want to have to deal, of course, with going to that sudden death tiebreaker at the end in race number 3. That's where it went tonight, and listen, I'll take it. Always more fun for us when there's a little bit extra drama. We love it. It goes all the way. Again, DEATCH wins it 2-1, but they're going to have to clean some things up. You're not going to be able to win the overall World Cup of iRacing on the oval side of things here if you run the race like you did tonight, and that's for everybody. Listen, all these teams throughout the qualifiers, and now as we head into these elimination races with a lot more stuff still coming up today on Race Spot TV and the iRacing eSports Network, is the fact that everybody is going to have to get better.
They certainly are, and I think New York can definitely hold their heads high after this race. They were maybe half a tenth short on pace, and I think if they had that, then I think they would have been right up there and probably could have stolen away a victory. It didn't work out for them, but they can come back next year and say, we can challenge these guys at ovals. DEATCH aren't as big of a fish as many people think they are anymore, because we took them right to the wire. We were 4 laps away from picking off a victory. If it wasn't for the fact one guy needed to make a stop, we would have been up there. We would have been going on to play UK and Ireland. I think this is a fantastic tournament. I love the fact that the heats format has come in this year. It is shaking up this racing, and I want to see more of it, and I want to see the clubs getting more involved.
And the good news for all of you at home who want more is we are far from over, with a lot more World Cup of iRacing action coming to you later on this evening, and of course into the next couple of days as well. But that's it for us from Michigan International Speedway. DEATCH wins atop of Club New York, and they are going to be moving on into the next round of competition. Want to say a big thanks over to everybody who organizes the things at the World Cup of iRacing. Of course, a big thanks to our team at Race Spot TV, everybody everybody who makes these broadcasts possible behind the scenes, the people in the booth on a night in and night out basis, and of course, well, for your broadcast team tonight, for myself, Evan Pasoko, for Jake Sperry, Paul Smith downstairs bringing us to you, we want to thank you for tuning in. Congratulations to Denise Sinobis, who holds the anchor for Club DEATCH. They win 2 out of 3, and they are moving on, but there is a lot more action still to come, with some road action at 7 o'clock, and as well, more oval action later this evening at 9. All that and more can be found right here on Race Spot TV and the iRacing eSports Network. Until next time, good night from Michigan International Speedway. DEATCH is moving on in the World Cup of iRacing.
The following is a presentation of the iRacing eSports Network.